Well, thank you, Phil. Thank you for joining us and taking the time today.
It's a pleasure.
If you can just please introduce yourself, your role at the institution you're joining from today, and maybe a bit about your background as well.
Okay, I'm Phil Carey. I'm Dean of the Teaching and Learning Academy, Liverpool John Moores University. Teaching and Learning Academy itself is quite a broad-ranging unit, educational development in effect, and part of our function is around evaluation in the student voice, which is of the most relevance to the Explorance products that we use. My own journey, I started off actually in cancer research way back when, a long time ago, and then I moved into teaching in the mid-90s. It is my lifeblood. I love teaching. It's the best job in the world when it goes well, and I took opportunities to develop more of an educational leadership focus because I care a lot about that sort of thing and it suits my mentality. So I managed teams in my own area. I was what we called an associate dean for education, which was the sort of local leadership role. And then in 2020, the role in the Teaching and Learning Academy came up and I went for that and I was pleased to get it. 2 months after I got the role, we had to support the whole of the institution to go online in COVID, which was perhaps a little bit of a trial by fire, but I have to say it's my favourite job ever.
And I guess it's worked out since ever.
Yes, hopefully. I'll let others be the judge of that though.
So Liverpool has obviously been a long-standing customer of Explorance, partnering since 2014. Can you speak to some of the success stories? Maybe it's an anecdote or some metrics that you were able to measure since then?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, a major success, a huge value that we got from Blue was in our regulator is called the Office for Students, and every 4 years we have to do something called the Teaching Excellence Framework, and in that you have to write a narrative to explain your institutional data. It's all publicly available data, but you could use internal data in writing that narrative. So we were able to dig into the data that we had on Blue that we'd reported on many occasions before. You know, this was data going back 3 or 4 years. We'd reported that before. We were able to develop bespoke reports to enable us to understand areas where the institution perhaps hadn't been doing so well, but we could demonstrate an upward trajectory. And it was incredibly useful for that. You know, Elena and I would sit there until quite late at night and we'd find these gems in the data, and we were able to say, there's a really good story going on in our School of Law, for example, which didn't show in the big institutional data set, but when you looked at it at that granular level, it was really, really helpful. So for me, you know, we did well out of that Teaching Excellence Framework, and I would say the way we used Blue was a big part of that success.
Makes sense. Are you able to speak to some of the maybe features or capabilities within Blue that was able to enable you finding these kind of discoveries in the data?
Yeah, I think some of it, I think actually probably another example that is more germane to that notion of the features is the way we used it for something else that our regulator requires to do, which is called the Access and Participation Plan. Okay. And we were able to use the features within Blue to follow student characteristics to then be able to identify a more granular sense of the learning experience of students with different demographic groups, different characteristics. We have a lot of students who come from quite poor backgrounds. A lot of our students are first generation. We've got all of that in our student information system, and we were able to, because it marries so well with Blue, we were able to use that to really understand how their experiences were playing out at a modular level, which was very helpful in developing our Access and Participation Plan, and will be part of the way we monitor that plan, because we have to return a monitoring report to our regulator, the Office for Students, every year to show how the plan is going. That's probably a better example, because with the other example, it was really just looking at the reports we had and the data we had at a modular level in different programs, whereas this, I think, the power of Blue to be able to analyse at lots of different ways was very helpful.
So that granularity, really.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Makes sense. And also, since adopting MLY, can you speak to some of those success stories since then?
Yeah, I think what MLY has done is it's enabled us to very quickly understand a more nuanced sense of the student experience. You know, we, like most institutions, we give students an opportunity to provide open text responses in a variety of different surveys that we manage through Blue. And being able to very quickly look at that data. Sometimes you get the alerts, there's something going on, let's look at it. And sometimes it's just that broader sense of what's going on. It saves a lot of time because you can spend an awful long time eyeballing data, and it becomes overwhelming. You know, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of words of data. It's doable, but it would be a job in itself. Millie can turn it around quite quickly. It doesn't do it perfectly, but it does it. I think it does it in a good way, because it doesn't alert us to things that aren't there. It's quite cautious in that way, which is very helpful, and it's learning. And we're seeing an improvement in the way it's capturing data as we move through time. So it's a very powerful piece of kit, really. It's been very helpful. And for me, I'm quite interested in those aspects of the student experience that aren't just surveys are one-way conversation, isn't it? I ask you a question, you can only answer that question. Right. You can answer it in whatever way you want, but you can only answer it in that way. Whereas open text gives us so much more opportunity. That's where students tell us the stories about their learning experience. And sometimes those stories are great and they lighten your heart, and sometimes they're not so great, but they then indicate where we need to go and look. And I was at Sam's talk earlier, and he talked about the way it empowers human judgment. And I think that's a really important task. It doesn't do the analysis for us. It tells us where to look. And I don't want something that doesn't the analysis for us, because no machine is ever going to be able to do that with the intuition that a human brings to it. But it directs us to where we need to look. It guides us. And I think that's incredibly useful. And I'm a great believer that this is evidence, not proof. And we then go and make the story, because we're the humans, that's the machine.
It's just a tool.
It's just a tool. It's a great tool, but it's just a tool.
Exactly.
It's artificial intelligence, it's not artificial cleverness. Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it. And now kind of looking more into the future, whether it's kind of just a wish list of Explorance products and Explorance capabilities, or just more of a wish list into Liverpool's feedback process. Can you kind of tell us what's next for Liverpool?
Something I'm quite excited about is we're looking at doing a pre-arrival survey with our new students, but using the 360 functionality. We've never used that before, so it will be a learning curve. But being able to use that to help students reflect on where they are in their learning journey. A lot of our students are, as I mentioned, first generation. They don't understand higher education. And using that 360 technology can enable us, one, to understand what their expectations are when they come here, and that's important, but also enable us to sort of manipulate to some extent those expectations, and to help students reflect where they need to learn. You know, some of our students have done very well in disadvantaged backgrounds, and they've been big fish in small ponds, and they come to a large university and there are small fish in a big pond, and they don't really know how they should act, what they should be, what they should focus on. So that, to me, that using that 360 to encourage that reflection, but also to then be able to provide data to, for example, our personal tutors, say, these are your students, they're telling us who they are, so you've got that information when you meet them.
Yeah.
And not about making judgments about them, but about starting those conversations in a way that is perhaps more meaningful to the student. So I'm really looking forward to us doing that.
Yeah, just assessing expectations.
Yeah.
And then seeing where
and self-reflection, because it's part of that process, isn't it? Again, it's trying to move away from the one-way features of a survey into something that's a bit more of a dialogue. Oh, you told me I need to do this. I didn't realise I couldn't do it very well. What do I need to do to help me do it? And of course, first-year students at the beginning of the year, they're really keen. They stop being keen as the programs progress. That's human nature. But in the beginning, they want to impress us, and they're investing. So getting them early to start doing this stuff, I think, could reap rewards.
Makes sense. I just have one last question.
Yeah.
And obviously, you've probably been to a lot of these Explorance events before, but I'm just wondering, what have you gotten out of Explorance World 2025, or what are you looking to get kind of at the last day of the conference today?
I think, I was thinking about this on the way in this morning. One of the things that, I suppose it's more of a wish for what we could do at the conference, is I think a lot of what we talk about is this is the evidence we've got, and this is the evidence that we've got in my context. So this is Liverpool John Moores University. We're a UK university. We're not at all like your universities in Canada, blah, 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 blah. And what that sometimes does is over-contextualise the data and the information and the ideas. So I think it would be quite nice, and some of the conversations we're having outside the sessions are this is what I need evidence on. How can Blue or Millie help me find that evidence? How can I use it and use the power of these tools? Because we're all doing things ever so slightly differently. And, you know, as you said right at the beginning, we've been a customer of yours since 2014. We're probably a bit long in the tooth with some of our practices now. So to talk to other colleagues who are going, really? You do it that way? Well, that's odd. I think that's really useful. So I suppose what I'd like to see from other conferences is not networking, because that tends, but almost like, this is my problem. How can you as a community help me to establish a better way of understanding this student experience?
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.